And welcome back to the Nothing Show. It's Monday, August 9th. I went to the fat doctor's this morning. I lost 2 pounds last week. It's not that good. I'm a little disappointed. I didn't have my treadmill here, so I wasn't able to exercise the way I had been. So we're going to have to get after it this week. But I think it brings my total weight loss to 27 pounds since like beginning of July. So that's a good deal. Just wanted to give a little update. I've gotten away from talking about that, but it's still important. It's still going on. I just don't think anyone really cares that much. But moving on. Today, I know I've been promising new and interesting content, but we're not there yet. It's gonna be a hard one today. But I want to start out the show by talking about some upcoming events. I was taking a look at some music, and it looks like Atmosphere, the duo of Sean and Anthony, who went to my high school. They were like a year ahead of me. I didn't know them, but I'm sure I know people that do. And if you're out there, if you can talk to Sean and get me an interview, that'd be fantastic. That would be some good content. Good slugs feelings on crypto. And if you're not familiar with Atmosphere, and you like hip hop, you go and check out some Atmosphere. Put that in your life. It'll melt your brain. It's good stuff. Big fan. Never seen him in concert, so I think it'd be fun. He's opening up for Cypress Hill again. Who doesn't love Cypress Hill? Never seen them in concert either. They've been around now for a few years, so they've got a couple dates. They got one up in Mesa in just a few days. I think on the 15th at the Mesa Performance Center. But the one I have my eye on is August 28th in Red Rocks, Colorado, because I'm already going to be there for the Black Crow show. It'll be the night before. So I'm thinking it's going to happen. It has to happen, right? We just do 2 nights in a row. I don't know if this old body can take 2 nights concert going at Red Rocks. I've done 3 days of widespread at Red Rocks in the past when I lived in Golden. But it's been a few years since we got down like that. But I think I got the energy in me to do it, to get it done. So, yeah, looking forward to that. So that's my little update. Anyone out there that knows Slug that can get me an in, I would really appreciate that. I know it's a long shot, but that's what everything here on my show is about, is taking on a little bit of a long shot. So, some good content coming. It's not here yet. Today we're going to talk about DLT, distributed ledger technology. So, yeah, kick back. Smoke them if you got them, bum them if you don't, and let's get after this thing. It's quite a doozer. So what is a DLT? Distributed ledger technology. Distributed ledger technology is a system that allows a group of computers to come to a consensus, to come to an agreement without actually having to trust one particular computer. Okay? So it's a way of putting transactions in order and then putting a timestamp on them, which is, this is kind of like I would say a mind-blowing concept to do this without having a leader. So the way it's always been done really in the past is, again, the way we come to consensus, you put in a leader and you do what the leader tells you. But in a DLT, you don't have a leader. There's no one in charge. We just the community of participants. Everyone is equal, and if we can mostly trust the group, then we don't have to trust one individual, and we can accept the group's decision 100%. We can trust the group's decision 100%. And the Hashgraph is the project that I want to talk about that does this. They're a DLT, they're a distributed ledger technology that does the ledger in a very unique way. And we're going to get into this and try and pull it apart so maybe you can understand it. I get it. It totally makes sense to me. I just don't know about how to explain it in a way that would make sense to people that aren't math and science nerds. But let's take it back to Bitcoin, okay? Because Bitcoin was this evolution in new currencies. We made a new currency where most currencies are controlled, again, by a leader. I mean, back in the day, it was the king. King was in charge. King told you how much the money was worth, and you did as king did. Of course, it's efficient, and that's the way it's been, and that's the way it is now with like fiat currencies. You have the central banks in charge, and all the transactions go to them. They decide which order they go in, and then it goes out. Now, this is really important, like in the stock market. Like if you're making an order, right, and you put in your order, that transaction goes to a central bank. You know, if you're doing the New York Stock Exchange, they have their, their central computer system that takes in all these millions of book orders and then decides which order they go in, and then sends that transaction back out and says, this is the order I decided on. Now, that requires you to trust that file server, that computer, to do the right thing, to follow the rules. And you can see just right off the top that if you could manipulate that file server, you could get an advantage. And when you are buying stocks, the order in which you are getting those stocks filled is very important, and it needs to be fair. And I'm not saying we don't trust the New York Stock Exchange file server, but again, it has the potential to be hacked, and there could be bad actors that could manipulate it and hack it. So along comes Bitcoin, which is this new idea in currency. It's ran by the community that participates in it. There's no leader in Bitcoin, and the money supply is constant. There's 21 million Bitcoins, and we all agree that that's never going to change. Now, the way the transactions are recorded in what we call the blockchain is anyone that participates in the network can create a block. Within this block, the transactions are stored, and then it's a linear stack, a block on top of block, and with that you get a list of all the transactions, and you can determine the time in which they occurred. So hence the blockchain, right? So the problem with blockchain, though, is you can't have these transactions. You can't have the blocks created at the same time. You got block, and now all of a sudden 2 transactions come in at the very same time, and what will happen is you get a fork. And because the blockchain doesn't know when they came in at the same time. So what blockchain does is they slow down, and if you get a fork, then one fork is going to win and get longer, and the longer one is always going to be the one that grows, and then this fork is going to become obsolete, and then it's going to be removed from the blockchain, and at that point you lose all those transactions that happened at the fork, and the whole system fails. You can see that if you removed a whole bunch of transactions from your ledger, that it would not be accurate. So we can't have, the whole thing with Bitcoin is they said, let's just slow it down. You can add a block, but it's got to happen slow. And so what they did is they created an incredibly hard math problem that it takes a supercomputer to figure out how to solve it. And when you solve it, you earn the right to write the next block. But it's slow, and we talked about that yesterday about transaction speed. Okay, so just by nature, Bitcoin does slow transactions to ensure security in the network, that it doesn't fork unintentionally by stacking 2 blocks right next to each other. So I hope that makes sense, but that's an important part because by design, Bitcoin is slow. It has slow transactions on purpose to keep the blockchain in order, to keep the transaction record in order. Now, Hashgraph has figured out a way of doing this with the speed of lightning, and the math behind it is really beautiful. And again, so we're creating this distributed ledger technology. It's called Hashgraph. A graph is like a mathematical concept of points on a line, and then those points are connected through the hash. So you get Hashgraph, okay? Hashgraph. So let's talk about how Hashgraph works. Hashgraph, so again, we're talking about putting transactions in order and putting a timestamp on them. So Hashgraph utilizes what's called a gossip protocol. You take your information, your message, or your transaction. There's a lot of applications here, but we're just going to use this basic idea of transactions. So you take your transaction and you randomly tell two people in the network about it, and then those two people tell, they each tell two more people, and then those four people tell four people, and after 10 steps, you've told 1,000 people. After 20 steps, you've told 1,000,000 people. After 30 steps, you've told 1,000,000,000. So it happens very, very fast. So it's a very fast way of exchanging your transaction history. So what Hashgraph does, though, is it employs the gossip protocol to exchange the information at a super high rate, and then it employs this voting algorithm. It's 30 years old, and what it requires is that millions of votes have to go out on the internet and to come back to validate the transaction. But what it does is it does it virtually, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But that's how you get consensus. So you have one message, and then you tie a tiny bit of information on top of it with the hash, which is so you connect to each other. I send you the information I have. You send me the information you have. And then we tie in. And then I say, here's a log of my last message from the last person I talked to. And so and again, a hash is just a encrypted piece, or a compressed piece of information. It's a way of taking like a whole transaction and compiling it down into just a little crumb of information. So there you go. So with the hash graph, you just have your information, and then the last person you talk to and their information. And then when you compile it on the hash graph, you can see the order of where all the transactions occurred, and everyone else verifies that information. Everyone else can see the same information, and you can create the order of transactions and put a timestamp on it. So when you have a record of all the information and in the order of when everyone received the information, you can determine how they would vote. You don't have to actually vote. You don't actually have to send out the information to have a vote, because I know everything you know everything I know when you figure it out, I know when you received the information and who you received it from, so I know how you're going to vote. So now I can employ this the voting algorithm, which is this beautiful math, and it gives you these guaranteed these great guarantees. So it's a great algorithm, but no one employs it because it requires that you do trillions of votes. But because we have this order established in the transaction and the timestamp, and we can see all of the information that who got it and when they got it, we know how you're going to vote. So we can run this voting algorithm virtually, just in our own head, at a free cost. We don't have to send out any bandwidth. We don't have to send out any more information than what we've already done with the message and then the hash attached to it. So it's incredibly fast. You come to consensus, and because of the hash graph, everyone can see it. Just like on the blockchain, you have an order of transactions, and there's no chance of doing duplicates. And it seems like it's just amazing technology. So again, the stock market has its application. In healthcare too, you could have a hash graph network set up so your doctor only has access to your information as long as you have your hash tied to the record, and then when you leave that doctor's office, you can remove the hash, and now that doctor can no longer access your information. And when you go to a new doctor, you can grant them access through the hash, and you don't have to transfer records. They can be immediately available. And again, too, like with wire transfers, and I mean, if you guys have ever tried to send money around the world, it takes some time. If you ever use the wire in this technologically advanced world where we send information instantaneously, it still takes 5 days to get a wire. And again, it's because of the speed of their ledger. And I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons involved, but this is one place, another application where Hashgraph could solve some real problems about how we transfer funds around the world. And again, we can take out the middleman and we can just do it amongst ourselves, and we can do it for free at like the smallest amount of energy costs. We don't need to run supercomputers to validate. We don't need these nodes the way your cell phone could be a node, because the amount of information in a hash graph is tiny. So, you know, your what was the little digital pet? I forget the name. What was the name of the little digital pet? Damn. Well, your Pikachu, your Takamaki could run Hashgraph. You know, the most simplest the chip in your phone, the chip in your camera, you know, any of these things could probably run at the Hashgraph. It's a tiny bit of information, and that solves the environmental problem of blockchain and proof of work mining. So again, fascinating stuff. I'm not the greatest person to speak on all of this, but for sure solve some problems, and has tremendous upside. I'm not really looking at a tokenomics or an investment strategy. Of course, this is never financial advice. I'm just looking at Hashgraph as a project, as a potential to solve problems in the world. You can do streaming services where the artist gets paid correctly, and make sure that only people are streaming your music that paid for the streaming, and then that the funds that they paid for the streaming goes to the people that own the art. So it could be used in music file sharing and streaming services, and in financial services and the stock market, putting in the order books. It could be used in healthcare to protect your privacy and to function within the limits of the governance. So when they say, we have to keep this record immutable for 5 years and then it has to be destroyed, you can do that on the Hashgraph, because we can all agree on the rules and they can't be changed as long as there's less than 1/3 bad actors in the network. So it's a incredible technology. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made a little bit of sense, and till the next time, peace.